Mishnah was basically compiled in Palestine in the 2nd century. And then the comments on the Mishnah, and funny, if you've ever seen a Talmud, it has a thing in the middle like this, and then it's got the thing like you would do, or I do in my books, written around the side of it. So the commentary is written around the thing in the middle. So the Talmud, here's the thing in the middle, and around the edge of it are all this writing, you see, which are the commentaries on what's here. Pretty arcane, but that's how it's collected. What's in the middle is the Mishnah. What's on the side of it are the commentaries that are called in Hebrew Gemara, which means completion. So the Mishnah is the same basically in the Palestinian Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud, but the conversations, the commentaries, the completions are much faster in the Babylonian Talmud. So you can go for these traditions about the Talmudic rich men in lots of places. And it turns out the best places to go for this are Gittin, which is, when you see a B, it means Babylonian Gittin. If you see a J, it means Jerusalem Gittin. Which is, the Talmud is divided into legal areas. By the way, the whole idea of traditions, seeking traditions, you experts in religion, went into what religion? Islam. All of Islam is constructed just like Judaism. Therefore, Islam is a kind of cosmopolitan Judaism, I will be said. Islam does not resemble Christianity at all. Muslims don't know this. If they do know this, they're not willing to admit it, so it's of no use to talk to Muslims about this. They're so totally dominated by medieval restrictions that they are not in a free-thinking environment. To get to a free-thinking environment in the West, you first have to undergo auto-da-fés, inquisitions, burnings. Even people like Joan of Arc was burning. I think the last burning occurred in England in the 1600s. They were burning people in England in the 1600s. I mean, just think of it. If you guys were going to express your mind, and you had a potential threat out there of being burned at the stake, how many of you would be out there expressing yourself in any open way except privately through maybe things like secret societies like the Masons or something, where you have to have an impenetrable code of protection and silence against outside authorities? That's why the church was so afraid of the Masons and so on. That's what the whole Da Vinci Code is supposed to be about in its own pathetic way. So Islam still, unfortunately, has its own environment of that kind. As you see, they just blew up the son of the previous Lebanese prime minister today, and it's a real tragedy because his predecessors, his uncle, was killed when he was going to be prime minister, and so on. It's a family, a Christian family in Lebanon that has just suffered immeasurable tragedy just because they tried to represent Christian interests in Lebanon. And this particular assassination today has to do with the Americans opening up a door to talk to the Syrians. They want people to blame the Syrians for this assassination. So this will be an Iranian-sponsored assassination to try to get the Americans to blame the Syrians, which, the whole thing is so convoluted and Byzantine. But in any case, whatever, the point of the matter is that it all goes back to Iran and Hezbollah at the moment. The Syrians cooperate with them, but they're not up to any much, they're not that capable. They're pretty pathetic, but they're not that capable. In any event, this still goes on in the Middle East, what I'm trying to say, endlessly. And you see, this can't be solved. Because to get to where you guys are, where you can express yourself freely and openly about things, you have to have, get rid of the inquisitions and the burnings and stuff like that. You have to have separation of church and state. You have to have protection of civil rights so that a person will and can speak. Even in Holland recently, when that Dutch filmmaker was making movies about the Middle East, the descendant of Vincent van Gogh, who was killed on a street in Amsterdam, and a sign was tacked on his body. You know, this is what happens to all unbelievers, or something like that, because he was making a film condemning female circumcision in Muslim countries. You know, his name, I forget his name, was Theo Van Gogh or something like that. Anyway, this is what goes on. So it does throw a chill. You have to have protection of church, division of church and state, but aside from protection, you have to have a system that actually is going to protect you. I mean, it's well enough to pronounce you're going to protect them, but then like in Russia today, no one's protected. So for instance, this guy in England yesterday was, or a couple of days ago, was fed a poison atomic pill because he'd been a member of the of the Russian secret police along with Putin. He actually was a colonel side by side with Putin. He defected and then he became a critic and revealed a lot of secrets. And he was investigating the death of the Russian woman journalist who was killed in the hallway of her apartment house a couple of weeks ago. And someone in London had information, and they slipped him clearly a Russian secret police poison capsule. And he's hovering on life and death, but they just discovered today that it was laced with nuclear material. So that it's doubtful that his marrow is gone, everything. It's doubtful that he's going to survive. And in the meantime, Bush is in Thailand putting his arm on Putin as his friend. You know, these people are thugs, murderers, killers. And the American public just doesn't get it. I'm not trying to be anything, but people just don't get it. They don't know the world they're facing. Instead, we get some dodos in Congress who are going on about the great sins of America, you know, and so on and so forth. You know, these people are living in cloud cuckoo land. They think that America's a great sinner. America, in its sinfulness, tries to do good occasionally. You know, it's misguided often and is not up to the task it sets for itself, but it is not a great sinner. It tries to do its best with limited people attempting to do this. People of very limited intelligence of the kind that we have been witnessing over the years. It doesn't mean it's one side is better than the other. They're both limited. We've got to get some of you geniuses up there. Anyway, everyone has faults and limitations. But the point is that Islam hasn't entered into that world. Many countries in the West haven't entered into that world where people's rights can be protected. So nothing will ever come of this kind of higher criticism, if you want to call it that, in the Islamic world. It will take 500 more years. And it's been set back in the last 100 years, 50 years, because Islam in the 19th century was trying to imitate Europe.